On screen tonight, you'll see Mel Dimmitt, who's, of course, the spectacular author of Special. So Melanie Dimmitt, if you haven't met Melanie Dimmitt before, she's a freelance journo, and since launching her book Special, which is 5 years old this week, is it this week? Around about this week. Um, uh, she has written, spoken, podcasted, and advocated far and wide in the disability world and for parents traveling not so typical paths. She also publishes The Blend tube feeding magazine for those of you who are in that world. She hosts the award or has hosted the award-winning NDIS Know How podcast and creates content for Hibby, which is an app that helps parents manage their child's care. Tonight, we're really, really excited to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the book. Not only do we have its author, Mel, but she's also invited 3 very, very special guests along to join us, Heather Cox, Tara Thompson, and Tanya Sava, who are also on screen. And Tara's just dialing in right now. And she is going, and we're going to catch up because all 3 of these ladies featured in the original Special book, and their stories were part of well, if you've read the book, their stories featured in that book. So it's going to be fantastic to catch up with them and see how their journey in the disability world is going 5 years down the track. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. A few quick housekeeping things before we get started. If I can get everyone who's not an official guest speaker tonight just to turn their cameras off so we can protect the bandwidth, and keep your microphones muted for the evening so we can make sure we can hear our speakers. I will be recording this tonight, and I'll send a link out to this recording tomorrow. So if you want to watch it back, because I'm sure there'll be lots of tidbits of information and stuff you want to watch back, I'll send out the link to that tomorrow. If you do have any questions for Mel or for any of our guest speakers tonight, what I'm going to get you to do is to not keep it in your head because you're probably going to forget it. Pop it into the chat as you think about it, and we're going to circle back at the end of the presentation, and we are going to get to as many of those questions about for these ladies at the end of the session. And finally, last exciting thing, those of you who have logged in tonight, I'm going to take a screenshot of all your names, and we have a very, very special competition where we've got 2 signed copies of the Special book that Mel has kindly donated. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pop them in. I'm going to print all your names out tomorrow, pop them into a hat and draw them out, and we'll have 2 lucky winners who will win a signed copy of the Special book that Mel will send out to you. So, but thanks for donating that, Mel. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get into it tonight. So I guess, wow, 5 years, a long journey. I'm sure a million things have happened in that time. So what's the latest, Mel? Give us a bit of a quick update about what's been going on since it's come out, and how has your life changed since the release of that book 5 years ago?
Short answer, heaps. I think it has for all of us. We've had, a little global pandemic in those 5 years, and a bit has happened. But firstly, Paul, thank you so much for throwing this little shindig for us. You've been such an amazing supporter of the book. I'm so happy that Special brought you and I together. One of my interviewees, Cassie Mendoza-Jones, was like, you've got to meet this guy, Paul. And she's like, I just can't wait to see the magic that happens when I connect you two. And it's just been so lovely working with you, being mates with you. I think you gave a testimonial. I think your words are in the front of this book. And I'm so appreciative of all of your support and helping get the word out there about Special. So thank you for celebrating and holding this event for us tonight. So much has changed. I'm amazed I'm still even talking about this book, to be honest, 5 years on, and that I'm still getting that it's still selling all over the world. I didn't expect that. I'm amazed and so excited by the success of this thing, and it's incredible to still get messages every week from people who've just found it, and to know that it's still somewhat relevant and still helping people is amazing. So I'm so grateful. I didn't expect this at all. It was a very self-serving project at the time. I was just so happy and was so healed by meeting, women like the 3 women I'm sharing the screen with tonight. And it just, I still can't Can't believe that I'm here talking about it still. But anyway, what's changed? This book it kept me writing, and I don't take that for granted. It's quite hard earning an income as a freelance writer, especially a caregiver / freelance writer. And Special really, it got me writing in the disability space, where I've learned a lot. And I never imagined I'd ever be writing in the disability space or know anything about this space. And it's just been incredibly meaningful. Before, I loved my job before. I was working in women's magazines, but it was a lot of, writing 10 ways to start your morning better. And now I'm interviewing the most incredible people and getting to write really cool stuff. So I love the direction that Special took my work in. I had a fantastic job at Higher Up, where that really opened my eyes. I walked into the office and just seeing people in wheelchairs and with all kinds of disabilities working in this gorgeous office, like, it just really helped me. I think Special got me more comfortable in the space, and then Higher Up really opened my eyes to disability. And I got to work, with incredible disabled people like Hannah Divney, who I have her phone number, like we're kind of friends, and I just so admire that woman. I think she's amazing, and I got to work with her and Ellie DiMichelier and Steve Ralph and these awesome adults with disability. I got to work really closely with the founder of Higher Up, Jordan O'Reilly, who taught me so much about the sector and about being an entrepreneur and starting something from nothing. And he's been such an incredible mentor to me ever since. And now I'm working with another startup. It's an app for caregivers called Hebe. And it's based in the UK, and we're a tiny team, but it's really exciting. I'm getting to do lots of writing, marketing things. I'm running a social media account, which is why I'm not on my own social media at all at the moment, because I'm running this other one and it's a lot of work. But I've learned a lot there, and I got to travel and go to London in April and hang out with the team. And I think a lot of you would know your child has complications and a lot going on, and I certainly never thought I'd be traveling, certainly not internationally, maybe ever again. And I used to live in London, and to get to go back after 9 or 10 years and just be there, it was just really very meaningful for me. So that was amazing. And again, like, Special got me that opportunity. The founder of Hebe, Sam, read Special, and that's how that job opportunity came along. And now I feel like I've gone full circle. I've just started a part-time job with Future Women. So I'm working under Helen McCabe and Jamila Rufsi, and these are, women that I always idolized back when I was working in magazines. So now I've got too many jobs, to be fair, at the moment. But anyway, I'm enjoying all of them. This one is amazing because I'm working, it's not solely in disability, but it's advocating for equality for women in the workplace. And a lot of the time, women who are caregivers can't go back to work. So there's that aspect of it, which I'm really excited about working in. And then there's the blend. I'm publishing the most random niche magazine in the world, and it's just going off. Like, it's got so much support, and I'm working on issue 4 now, so I can keep doing it. And I'm back, creating a magazine and absolutely loving it, and sharing stories and shedding light on a space that, 5 years ago, Arlo wasn't tube feeding. I would have thought it was a disaster back then that he was tube feeding. And then, again, to come crashing into this space, thinking it's horrible and awful, and then learning, like, no, this is actually amazing. It just needs better branding and better storytelling. Let's get a beautiful resource out there. It's been wonderful. So yeah, my work has changed a lot. We've moved out of the city. We're not in Sydney anymore. We're in Moss Vale in the Southern Highlands, which I thought, again, would be terrible. It's been amazing. We live in, we could afford a big flat house, which is perfect for Arlo's wheelchair, and our enormous Kia Carnival with the ramp that comes out the back can be parked anywhere at any time, which was not happening in the tiny streets of life out in Sydney. And the community here has been so cool. Both Odie and Arlo, like, Arlo's 8 now, Odie's 6, and they're both at the same public school up the road. Arlo's in mainstream, supported one-on-one, loving life. They're both really good. So yeah, a lot of change, a lot has happened, and it's not all good. I was whinging to Paul earlier, we're still in and out of hospital a lot with Arlo. That kid gets every cold, flu, virus you could get, and he just does it he goes all the way with it. So we're often in and out of hospital, but our local hospital is lovely. They know him. They pretty much roll out the red carpet every time we arrive, and he flirts his little face off with the nurses, and it's not actually bad.
He was always a flirt.
He's such a flirt, and he's such a good. Like, I was just hanging out with him before, and he's there on his eye gaze, which I don't think when Special came out, he probably had it, but he probably wasn't doing too much in it. And he's there like telling me jokes. Like, what did he say? He's like, what did the toilet say to the other toilet? You look flushed. Oh. And like coming out with all this stuff. And he does this at school when he's not meant to. But he's just such a cheeky, cool little guy. And I just, again, I feel so lucky.
That's fantastic. All right. So I mean, so a lot. So that's a lot. A lot has happened in 5 years. All right. So let's just rewind a little bit here, and let's talk about what possessed you to sit down one day and start writing this thing. Was it boredom? Was it like, or you just you had words to get, you had opinions to get out there? Like, what possessed you to sit down and start writing this book and then get it out into the world?
Was it boredom? It must felt bored.
Got all the time in the world. Why not?
What I wouldn't give for like a minute of boredom. No, it wasn't boredom, Paul. And you know it wasn't. It was desperation. It was this thing doesn't exist. I feel like my life is over. We were given this horrendous DVD from a very well-meaning social worker who came out to our house to, you know, get us familiar with cerebral palsy and the space. And this DVD was just so depressing. And I was like, I need something to aspire to. I need to know that there are families that are doing this and they're having good lives that are fun and still able to work and still able to travel. And it was just it was the worst time. I just felt so sad and so hopeless. Mandy Hose is here. I'm just seeing she's entering. Can I admit her, Paul? Oh, you did.
Oh, you already did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this book didn't exist. I just wanted words. I wanted inspiration. I didn't want to connect with parents in support group settings. I'm still not a huge fan of that. But I knew that this would be a great excuse to chat with parents. And it was funny, I was looking back on the emails I first sent you guys saying, can I please interview you? And I was calling it like a handbook. And I remember at the time, I didn't actually think it was going to be a book. I was lying. I was just using this as an excuse to talk to parents and, you know, got to speak to these amazing women and so many other parents. And as soon as those conversations started happening, I felt better. You know, I'd come off the phone or off the Skype call, because it was Skype then, or away from the coffee, having just met someone for the first time, total strangers, but feeling instantly like I had this incredible connection with this person and feeling so much better about everything. And I was like, there's really something to this. And the things that they were saying were kind of the same. It didn't matter what disability their kid had, where they were in the world, what they were up to. The experiences we have at the start of this and the feelings we experience and the struggles we have, there's a lot of a common ground there. And those things form the chapters. I shared, you know, the picture of our wall back in Leichhardt that was just covered in Post-it notes, just of ideas. And it was nice even looking at that again and noticing some of them were written in Rose, my partner's handwriting. And I remember I'd be there like breastfeeding Odie, spoon feeding I'll be like, oh, I've got this idea, Rose, quick, stick the Post-it up. And we'd be like putting this together. Because when you start a project, ideas always come to you at really inconvenient times. But yeah, talking to these parents, I was like, there's something here. This could be a book. And yeah, it was just, it really helped me. It was a massive distraction. It was a huge project that I didn't have the time or space for. And it meant there was less time to wallow and be sad. So yeah, like I said, it was completely self-serving. Major bonus and major surprise that it did become a book and I got a book deal and it got into the world and it's helping others. And that it was a huge relief to me that others felt the same, because I was saying a lot of really honest, quite awful stuff at times. And it was just amazing when other parents said, yeah, me too. Like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And so let's just, we may have some budding writers online tonight. Do you have any advice for them? I mean, you've already told us about the post-it notes and all that sort of stuff, but any advice to potential writers who may be thinking about doing a similar thing and starting to put their thoughts of this new world they find themselves in onto paper? Any advice?
Yeah, look, humble beginnings, post-it notes. Tanya, be warned, I'm going to call on you for this question as well, because I get the question I get asked the most on my DMs is, or, you know, parents get in touch and say, I've got an idea for a book. How do I get it published? And I'm so happy to share like the materials I use. So for special, because it's nonfiction, I mean, you go to different publishers and look, and they have different requirements for submitting, and sometimes different times of the year to submit. But generally nonfiction, you don't have to write the whole thing, which is great. I think I wrote like the first 20,000 words and put together like an outline for what the chapters would be, and put together a proposal, which basically said what it is, why it's needed now. Like the timeliness is really an important factor, who you are, why you're the right person to write it. So yeah, like I said, if anyone wants to get in touch, I've shared that quite a few times. I often get asked about like whether to self-publish. I think things have changed a lot, even in just like the past 5 or 6 years. I went the traditional route. So I went to the publishers. I was lucky working in magazines. I had contacts who could get me past the slush pile at Penguin. And Penguin were actually quite interested for a while, but then in the end said, oh no, look, it's too niche. And for free, don't let anyone tell you that our community is niche. We're not. And niche is not always a bad thing, as I can tell you from my tube fitting magazine, which has just gone off and could not be more niche. Anyway, so I got pushback from Penguin and Allen and Unwin for being too niche, but they were very encouraging about the proposal. So that kind of spurred me on. And then I went to smaller independent publishers and came across Jane Curry at Ventura in Sydney. And she just got it. And I'll never forget, like I submitted, and then not too long afterwards, I got an email back from her that not only said that she loved the proposal, but that she wanted to publish in September of the following year. And I couldn't even speak. Like when I got that email, I just had to I said to her, I'm really sorry, I just have to go for a walk. And I just walked all around Leichhardt. Like I couldn't believe it. It was so exciting. And so I worked with her, and because she was small, it was great. She let me have a lot of control. I got to go in there with like my mood board and because I got special branded. I was like, I really want it to look a certain way. I don't want to, I want to control it. I didn't want like a picture of me and Arlo on the front or anything like that. I wanted it to be for everyone. And I had like very clear ideas about what I wanted. And Jane was amazing and let me do all of those things basically. So it was wonderful. And she knew, she believed in it. She published stuff in the disability space before, like the autism handbook. So she really got it. So I got very lucky there. But nowadays, like I self-publish the blend, and there's a lot of ways you can go. To anyone who's even thinking about this, I'd say if you're feeling like writing about your experiences, do it, because it's a really healthy thing, good thing for your mental health. And it's very hard once you're a few months and years down the track to capture how you felt then. Thank God you're not in that mindset anymore. But I was really grateful that I kept a diary, which I've used a bit in special, because you change quickly and you lose that raw hard bit at the start. So I'd say to anyone, write it down. And it doesn't have to be a book. Like nowadays people are sharing so much amazing content on social media. You can pitch to, like a personal essay to Mamma Mia. There's a whole bunch of, different platforms that will publish your work. So there are many, many ways to do it. But I would just say, if you're even thinking about it, just get it down. Good for your head and could be very useful later. A lot of people ask me about children's books. And here, Tanya, is where I'm going to throw to you, because you have published a children's book. What advice do you have for people who have a great idea for a kid's book and want to get it made?
I think I was, hi everyone. It was quite a unique situation for me because I was already a part of a writing group, and I ended up going down a path of quite incredibly having an established, best-selling author creating a publishing house to print my book for me. So it was quite a unique and very special situation. And because I haven't published another children's book, I don't know. Yeah, I think, you know, one of the, and for you as well, I think, Melanie, because you were already in the space of writing and journaling and editing and, you know, had your hands in that world, it's important to be a part of a community in some capacity, whether it's a writing group or, you know, doing some online writing courses, but ones that are quite intimate so that you're getting to actually connect with the people that are facilitating it, and you're not just a number amongst a whole bunch of other people. Because I think in some ways it is a little bit who you know. You know, of course, there are many unknown authors who go out to publish and do incredible work in the world. And so it's totally possible. And I just really held the vision and the belief that it was possible to get that book out in the world. And similar to you, because it was somebody that I knew and was already working with, I had full free reign to do what I wanted. And I was like, I will only let you do this if you don't change anything about my book. And she was like, all right, done. So that was important for me as well, because it was such a personal and intimate and very special story. So yeah, I think it's a big world, and there are so many avenues, whether it's, you know, small publishers, big publishers, self-publishing. There are so many amazing ways to get your books out into the world today, and all that you need to do is just trust that it's possible and just write the thing. Whatever it is, just write the thing and just hold the vision. And it's a process. You know, you had someone say yes, but it's going to be September next year. Yeah, I think from me writing my book to it being published, it was a couple of years as well. So nothing's going to happen swiftly, but just trust that it's available and you'll fall into the right people at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I always sort of thought, like, even if this doesn't, because even when you get the deal, like, you don't know for certain. I didn't, you know, trust that it was going to be a book, but I was like, I'm just getting so much out of this anyway. Like, it's so worth it. And, you know, from the beginning, I was like, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, I feel this is making me feel so much better. And that is where, like, I'm still so grateful that with how much it helped me and my mindset. So yeah, that's the way to go at it. I'd go at it not planning to be, like, you know, a best-selling, or because it's very unlikely. And even if you do have a best-selling book, it makes bugger all money. So don't go into it for the money. You get opportunities, but I guess just do it, you know, to help yourself out, and to, you know, in my case, it helped me connect with this incredible community. Now that I'm thinking of it, sorry, I'm going off script, Paul, but Heather has written prolifically for a lot of platforms, and Tara, you've published books as well. Tara, I'll start with you. What advice do you have on this one?
This was caught me by complete surprise. So I started sharing, obviously, on Instagram, and people reached out to me, like a physiotherapist in America, and she reached out to me and was like, what do you think about co-authoring a book? I was like, what do you mean? Like, it just came out of nowhere. And she was just watching what I was doing with Willow, and she was really interested in getting that family perspective into therapy at home. So yeah, that sort of came out of nowhere for us, and it was an e-resource book. So I spent many months like gathering information and putting down like what we were doing and why we were doing it. So I sort of got to do that creative aspect and just share what was working with us, and she sort of put the final sort of things together, and she did all the publishing and all that sort of stuff. So it was, quite a little bit easy for me. I didn't have to go through all of that stuff, but like you guys said, such a it was so unexpected, that sharing that, how much that helped me. It was the best unexpected surprise. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that shows the value in sharing, like with your social media. Like, people come to you when you start putting truth out there, like the people and opportunities come your way, which is really cool. Heather, what advice do you have? You've been published all over the place and shared a lot of beautiful
I think you big me up too much, Mel. But I mean, essentially what happened is, you know, like Tanya, I kind of just started honestly, it's so selfish in a sense, but I got sick of people asking me about my daughter and how's she doing, what's wrong with her, you know, commas. I got sick of all the questions, especially from like family when I was in that period of just not wanting to kind of retell the trauma all over again. So I actually just put a Facebook page up about my daughter, and I'm like, if you want updates, come here. And I literally used it as I think it's just part of me processing my emotions. I just, as I started learning about the disability space and different ways of looking at things, it's so transformational, what you go through when you learn all about, you're basically thrust into this plan B for life, I guess, and it's not on your radar, and having to sort of process all of that. And I just did it all, through her, through this blog site. And I just I had people approach me essentially and just say, oh, we like your writing, can I borrow this blog for this, that, and the other? And at first it was all just, sure, and it was unpaid. And then after a while, I got people in the disability space asked me to write blogs and pay me. So that was nice. But it was great, especially when life was very much in and out of hospital and I needed flexible working. Yeah.
Lovely. Oh, amazing. Like how incredible that all four of your journeys have led to being published in some way, shape, or form. That's fantastic. All right, so we're going to rewind. I know we're meant to be introing these three wonderful ladies on the screen right now, but we've already flown through them. But for those of you who are just tuned in, Tanya, Tara, and Heather all were interviewed and featured as part of the special book. So whether or not you've read special book or not, they featured in that book. You may remember the stories as we start talking to them. But I guess let's rewind a little bit back, Mel, and maybe you can throw to each of the ladies and ask them, how did you first get involved? How did you first get introduced to these ladies, and how they came to be involved in the special book?
Absolutely. So Tanya, someone told me about, I think it was a retreat you were doing called Rest and Reset. Is that right? And they were like, you've got to mention this retreat. It was specifically for parents raising kids with disabilities. And that's when I came across your writing, your work. You've been working prolifically in the space, supporting our community. And I was just like, wow, incredible. And you were very kind and said yes to an interview. Heather, we met in a really weird way. We both were gifted a family photo shoot with this photographer, and we'd both gone along with our families at different times. And then typical trap everyone falls into, they take all these amazing photos, send you the amazing photos, and they say, okay, and here's our price list for the photos. And I wrote back and was like, really sorry, my kid's just been like diagnosed with something, and this is, before NDIS. I'm like, we have no money. Really sorry. And this photographer was so sweet, and they were like, oh, don't worry, here are all the photos digitally for free. By the way, another parent gave me the exact same excuse the other day, and I was like, oh, who is that parent, and can I have their number? But this photographer hooked Heather and I up, and that's how we met. And Tara, I was told about you by our amazing physio, because you were just this superstar, and still are, of the allied health space, making it look amazing and possible for parents to do home therapies with all of your incredible homemade kit and stuff that you were sharing. So it was through my physio that I stumbled across you. And again, was just super excited when you said yes to an interview. Paul, are we going to read out official bios, or shall I get each person to intro them? Oh, I hate having to do that.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll start the questioning, and I'll get you each to intro yourself when I throw your first question at you. Tara, you're first. Can you give me a little bit about who you are, and also please tell us a little bit about your beautiful daughter Willow, who brought you into this space?
Okay, so I think it's probably best to take it back to the start. So I was actually studying to be a primary school teacher, and I was pregnant with Willow. I'd done, I think, 7 years, or maybe even 8 possibly, because I had Ava and was doing it part-time. Finally got to my internship stage, and Willow was, I think I got to week 9, like the final, I think I had like 4 more days or something like that. And I had a bleed at school, and I was 29 weeks at the time, and I thought, oh, okay, like that's fine. Like I did have a little one before, and I rang my midwife, and she's like, get to the hospital straight away. I'm like, that's really dramatic. So I thought I'll be fine. And then I thought, oh, I better go. So I rang my sister, told the school I can't come in. I'll be in there, like I'll probably be an hour tops, and then I'll come into school. And then I got into hospital, and like the room was just full with all these people, and I was like, this is just crazy. Like, well, why are they all here? And one midwife like whispered in my ear, do you know you're having your baby? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so then just like the world stood still. So that's sort of how it all began. So I was studying education. Previously, I'd worked in early childhood. So always loved working with children and loved being creative and coming up with playful ideas. So yep, Willow came at 29 weeks, very unexpectedly. We were told at 2 weeks old, she had damage to her brain, and that she would probably have like this whole long list of disabilities. This doctor rattled off, and I was just absolutely floored. I'm like, what do you mean though? Like, she's perfect, like she's in here, she's fine. And yeah, so we were told that one of them possibly would be cerebral palsy. And I guess that consumed me a little bit then. So I was always on the lookout, like, okay, Googling cerebral palsy, looking for the symptoms. And as she grew, I noticed that her hands were constantly in a fist. And I sort of thought for a long time, I think she has cerebral palsy. Like I had it in my head. Okay, she does. It's okay. And then I think it was 6 months old, she was officially diagnosed. Which was just such a shock, and I didn't understand why I felt so sad and shocked, because I'm like, didn't I already know this? But it's just, I guess it's such a different thing when somebody confirms that for you. So we got thrown into the early intervention world, and I sort of threw myself into it. I thought, like, I want to do everything that I can. I knew early intervention, like there was so much you could do in those younger years. So I threw myself in, but I think to start with in a sort of unhealthy obsession a little bit. So if our physio said to do something, I was like, right, yes, we have to do this. And I started like writing lists down and all these things that we had to work with. And I had my youngest too at the same time. She was just 2 years old. So it was just, yeah, it was just a lot. So she turned, I think it was about when she turned 1. And I didn't even realize I was really struggling, because I thought, I'm doing so well, I'm so proactive. And yeah, so she got to about 1, and I thought, oh, I think I might start like just trying different things. So one day I got out a piece of wood with some paint. We sat down, my other daughter was doing it, and she was sitting up, using her core, using her affected hand, engaged in sensory play, which was an issue for her. And my other daughter was doing it, and they were laughing and having so much fun. And it just clicked. That was my light bulb moment. I'm like, it doesn't have to be scary and overwhelming. We have just spent an hour playing, and we've got all these things done. Like, so my whole mind shift changed from then. And then I thought, oh, like how fun, like I might start documenting this on Instagram, because I wanted my husband to see what we were up to. Because I feel often like he was off at work, he didn't know what we were doing about the appointments. And so I thought I'll document it for him to see. And then I thought, oh, I might share it with family and friends so they can, like someone said before that you were constantly saying the same story. So I thought, if it's all here, everyone knows what's going on. And then I thought, I was looking for inspiration too, and I was searching for like bimanual therapy, constraint therapy. Nothing was out there, and it baffled me. I was like, why? This is so important, and there's no one sharing things. So I started hashtagging activities we were doing at home, and it sort of grew. And by it growing and me connecting with other families, it became like this therapy outlet for me. And I feel like that's when my true acceptance for this whole diagnosis journey truly happened, when I started using that as a therapy tool for me as well, and connecting with other families. So anyway, along the way, Willow also got an autism diagnosis. We've been overseas for SDR surgery. It's actually funny. So when you first approached me, Mel, I didn't know what to make of it. I'm like, oh, yep, like why not? Like, I'll share a bit of our story. Had no idea it was going to eventuate into something like this, but when the book came out, I wanted to read it. Like, I was itching to read it, but Willow had her surgery coming up. So I waited. I'm like, no, don't open it. Don't even read a page. Like, wait till you're on that plane going to this big life-changing operation for her. So I saved it, and I think I read it on the flight there and the next day. I just couldn't put it down. So she had this surgery. She's now at school. She's doing well. We had another little one surprise us and come along. So I've got 3 girls. And yeah, she's 10 now. She's in year 3. She's in mainstream. She goes to her school with her sisters. That's been a big journey to get her to enjoy school and all the things that go with that. But yeah, she's doing well. She's hilarious, funny, sassy little firecracker who has so much confidence. Yeah, so it's been a wild journey, but that's sort of how, yeah, it all came about.
Yes. And Tara, I'm so curious to ask you now, because I remember, when we spoke for special, you were like, therapy, that was my savior. And certainly from your socials, like it looks like you just do heaps at home. You put us all to shame. 5 years on, I mean, I was doing quite a bit with Arlo back then as well, because you were right. It felt like you were being proactive and doing something really positive. Nowadays,
Yeah,
I don't do very much with Arlo. I mean, he's bigger now. It's quite awkward.
yeah,
I also just don't feel this desperate need to have him walking and standing. I mean, he's great. He takes independent steps in a walker, so he's technically walking. He's super strong. But if I'm honest, and Paul won't like me saying this because I know we're all meant to do our therapy, don't actually do that much. Do it in the therapy sessions, which he still has a lot of, but I don't actually spend that much time, if any, doing home exercises with Arlo. How has your relationship with Willow's home exercises changed over the years?
Yeah, so we're sort of the same. We don't do that much. Like, she started school and she's so tired. And I guess the thing is, I was like sort of working a little bit online through the opportunities that came through the Instagram page, and like some random casual days. So I did have that opportunity to be at home, and I think I like being creative. I like being organized. So the last thing, I didn't want people to think like, oh, I should be doing this. Like, that was sort of like, as much as connecting with other people was therapy, coming up with those activity ideas, like allowed me to use my brain and get me excited about it. And I think just her enjoying it so much as well. Like, she ended up loving it. And then as she got older, she started to learn, oh, this is helping me, because she's quite a clever little thing. And she'd often blame me. Like, if she ever fell or couldn't do something, she'd rip into me like, you didn't do therapy with me, and this is why this is happening. So she loved it, and it became a part of her world. She wanted to do it. And yeah, so sort of, and then she had this operation, and we had to have this crazy amount of therapy, so which only intensified at home. I thought she was enjoying it more with me, so we did most of it at home. But yeah, starting school is just a whole different journey. It was a struggle to even get her there. She was so tired and so fatigued. So we didn't incorporate it as much. It turned into her appointments were when she was like with her therapist. But also, I think she got older, so it was easier to sort of adapt it into our everyday, like little things like, as she got older, she needed to dress herself. So every morning we're doing little bits of therapy. It changed from having that play and all these little skills we need to work in, that they naturally progressed into skills anyway. Like at school, she's getting social skills. She's learning at school. She's moving at school. She's doing all of that. So I definitely don't put pressure on it at all. And even when she was younger, if we weren't feeling it, we didn't do it. So it's just, too much. She does gymnastics after school, and that's her main form of therapy. And again, like, she's being active and social, and she's there not with me, so we're getting rid of that separation anxiety. She's being social. So I think as they get older, they do start to constantly working on skills without even knowing anyway. But yeah, there's just too much going on. But I do miss it. I thought the other day, I'm like, gosh, I miss being home and doing that. Like it was, yeah, really special time.
Gosh, we're so different, Tara. I'm glad that you.
I know some people are like, that looks like my worst nightmare, what you were doing. But to me, I was like, oh, this is my happy place, like doing that stuff. Yeah, funny.
Whatever works for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Heather, on to you. I know you do an absolute crud ton of therapies and probably still doing lots of therapies with Ari. We've spoken about this a lot, but before we launch into my questions for you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your gorgeous daughter, Ariana?
Hey, sorry, my network's a bit playing up, so I hope you guys can hear me okay and I'm not too like jumping in and out. So I'm very much I guess I can kind of relate a little bit, Tara, to what you were saying, and that, but for me it was, when it came to therapy, it was more about sort of having goals for my daughter. So my daughter Ariana, she has Soto syndrome, but at the time that I wrote the book, I actually didn't have a diagnosis. So from memory, so we were in the rare disease space. I knew she had a rare genetic something, but I actually had no idea what it was. And our life was very medical, so it was in and out of hospital as things came up. So she was tube fed. She had some sort of it's almost like diabetes. It's called hyperinsulinemia. So basically I was pricking her 4 times a day. She would vomit all the time. She had sleep apnea. She had severe scoliosis, emergency heart surgery, all sorts of fun things in those first 14 months of her life. And then when we got a diagnosis, it kind of brought some clarity, I guess, and took away some of those fears. She's now a 8-year-old little sassy girl, and she's in a mainstream setting like Mel and Tara, your children. She does take a little bit longer to learn, so she needs a bit of support, and it's certainly not been always an easy journey managing the mainstream world for my daughter. But so I can definitely relate to that. But I would say that it's probably more on the side of like low expectations and ableism from the school than it's really been my daughter herself. She's very happy at school, and she loves it there. She feels like she's got lots of friends, even though she spends lunchtime in the library drawing. But for her, friendship looks a little bit different. She also has an autism diagnosis and ADD. She's a very compliant child, generally speaking, and wants to do well. And we don't have, she grew out of her scoliosis, well, I say grew out of her scoliosis with wearing brace 20 hours a day till she was 6 years old. She was managed to keep her back straight, so we didn't need to have surgery. So there's some really happy news there. She overcame her tube feeding. We don't have constant respiratory illnesses in and out of hospital anymore. So her medical situation is a lot better today. We still have new things crop up though. She's recently discovered, thanks to NAPA and their amazing therapist, that my daughter is a Gestalt language processor. So I'm still trying to get my head around what that actually means. It's not actually cast as a disability. It's more like being left and right-handed, but it does mean a slight difference in the way that we teach her language. So I've had to sort of wrap my head around that one. And she also has some issues with tracking, which is affecting her reading. But she is reading, and your perspectives change. I heard the other day that she's in the second to lowest reading group, and I was like, yes. Yeah. Like that was like a real win for me. But I was thinking, couldn't imagine that would mean so much to me, but it was just nice to see that she wasn't the only child struggling in a sense. Not that I would ever want other children to struggle, but you take your wins where you can get them. I think the learning support teacher looked at me funny when I was like, I was like, that's great. So yeah, so you know, she's we're navigating 1 year at a time when it comes to school. You know, you find lots of people say, oh, like when I was in kindy, it was like, oh, so what are you going to do when she gets to high school? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let's get her to year 1 first. You know, it's like people can often try and fast track you. You know, and as we know with our children, they evolve so much, right? Like, so the things that perhaps that we were scared of. I know, Mel, you talk a lot about this. You know, your fear of this worst case scenario of Arlo not walking, and now the not walking bit is not actually the bit that really sort of bothers you too much, right? And it's sort of the same. I've sort of had a similar thing, and the things that I thought would really upset me. And yeah, at the beginning, I was given a whole list of these are the 100,000 things that can come with your daughter's syndrome. And you just learn to just put that aside and go, okay, well, there's also 1,000 things that I could probably die of tomorrow. I don't want to know those either. So let's just park that and take them as they come. So yeah, I could go on, but she's 8 years old. She's got a beautiful relationship with her sister, who fights with her like any other child. She grows enormously, so people often think she's like 11. She's like size of an 11-year-old, probably acts more like a 6-year-old, and is actually 8 years old. So there's kind of a bit of a disconnect in me feeling like I need to kind of explain it to people, which can be frustrating. But yeah, she's happy. We go on holidays. We've been overseas with her. I often say we have a sort of near normal life. You know, she loves roller coaster rides and water parks, and she draws constantly and crafts. So she's got a real skill in art. So I kind of focus less now on her deficits and more on the things that she's good at, because like remember thinking to someone, like she does a weekly art class with her peers, which is an hour and a half. And I remember thinking, you know, isn't it funny how with my oldest typical daughter that I actually put her in activities after school that she's good at, because that's the things that she wants to do. Whereas when you have a child with a disability, it's all this focus on let's put them in all the activities they're not so good at so they can kind of catch up or improve, when actually that's not necessarily the right balance for our kids. They also need to be kids and enjoy things that they're good at. And at the end of the day, I think my daughter's independence in the future would depend more on the things that she's good at, you know, potentially something creative for her, than on me getting her to, you know, skip or, you know, do some of these other activities that, you know, could mean hours and hours of therapy. So my mindset has definitely changed. You know, and I also believe that, you know, life skill, everyone talks about life skills with kids with disabilities. And I think, you know what life skills is? Actually living life. You know, just like put your kid out there with other kids and just let them live. And as, you know, I think as a parent of a child with disability, you're given so many ideas about, you know, the different paths that your child should be on. And I've really been influenced by family advocacy and some of the things I talk about around, you know, giving my child as much typical experiences as well, with the appropriate adaptations that she may or may not need. And, you know, that her living a full life is more important to me than her hitting milestones, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, I go on.
No, absolutely cheers to that, Heather. And we've just had a beautiful message come through for you from Rachel and Matt, saying this is giving us hope for the future. Thank you. We have a 2-year-old daughter with a rare genetic condition in the thick of it. So hearing you saying, you know, we have a pretty normal life, which you never could have imagined. I remember our chat really poignantly because, yes, I don't think you did have Ari's first diagnosis yet, or maybe you just gotten it. And the quote that you gave me around this opens the chapter on fear, because it was so strong. I'm going to read you now, which is mortifying. I know, but it's happening. You said, I was terrified either way, to be honest. I was terrified that she'd live, and I was terrified that she'd die. Sounds horrible to say, but I didn't know how I'd cope if she made it, and I didn't know how I'd cope if I lost a child. And that was one of these things where I'm like, you were so honest with me. And I think so many of us felt that way. And just like, look at you now, my friend. Like, seriously, you still face so many unknowns. We all do with our kids. Yeah. Your perspective completely changes. Like you said, if you told me my son wouldn't walk, talk, he'd be tube fed, wheelchair user, fuck, I would have died. I would have died.
Yeah.
I didn't need that information then. By the time we got there, completely made sense. Now I don't want to know an Arlo that walks, talks, eats with him. Like, it just wouldn't be him. Like, it freaks me out to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so-
I think one of the I think you're going to ask me the question around like how do I deal with that? If you don't mind, I might as well answer it now. Sorry, it's going a bit off script.
Nowadays, how do you deal with the uncertainty?
I was going to say that something someone said to me I thought was so helpful, and it was like, you know how you're given this, early on people are like, well, you just need to accept the diagnosis or accept your child or accept it. And I was kind of like, well, at the time I didn't have a diagnosis, and I was like, what exactly are you asking me to accept? Are you asking me to accept that my daughter will never walk, my daughter will never talk, my daughter will live only a short time? Like, I actually don't know what I'm accepting, so I don't really know how I can move forward and accept what I don't know. And then someone else said to me, is like, just, you don't need to accept like an unknown future, just accept where you're at today, and then tomorrow accept where you're at tomorrow. Like, just that's all, focus on that. And that really helped me. I was like, oh, okay, well, let me find the joy in what we're doing today, and then we'll move forward tomorrow to focusing on accepting that. And I'm not saying it's easy, like in terms of the fear, I don't think there's no magic wand that makes me never fear anything in the future. I mean, I also fear for my typical child. There's probably a number of scenarios that pop up for her that are different to the number of scenarios that would pop up for my neurodiverse daughter. But none of us know what tomorrow brings. And I think, my geneticist said to me, I actually saw him in real life, which is really freaky to see your doctors like in your normal environment. So I was actually at a markets, and there was a geneticist there, and he's like, I'm like, oh, hi. And he said, just to put things into perspective for you, Heather, of these, like, probably it's a very busy market, 100 people at this busy market, probably like most of them will have some sort of genetic like condition, like genetic change. So we all have genetic conditions and all have gene mutations, and how they show up in Ariana is very like more obvious perhaps, and is affecting her. We know that early on, but any of us can have any number of things going on that we find out about. In fact, I found out I had something the other day, which as long as I keep on top of is fine. But it's just one of those things that like there was nothing, we all have to accept an unknown future in a sense. And yeah, as long as we take it one day at a time and learn to focus on the joy that we can find, that's going to help. And I think also, like, Mel, I have to just say, like, your book helped me so much. I feel so proud to have been part of it, and like just allowed me to connect with other amazing people, and just learning about ableism and disability, and challenging those perceived ideas about what's typical, what's normal, what is a good life, what does it mean to not have this Instagram perfect life. I mean, Tara, you had an Instagram perfect life with a very atypical, sort of existence, really, with your beautifully curated, page. So there's just so many different ways to have an amazing life. And that's also something else that I just come to. Like my sister doesn't have kids, but man, she has an amazing life. And so I think, there's so many different ways to have an amazing life. And hopefully my daughters don't feel constrained by any one path, and that's another thing that I come to.
Yeah, it gives you a really good perspective on all aspects of life. I think you realize that anything can happen to you at any second, which is both terrifying but also like really liberating. And it's what we're all meant to be doing, is living in the day. And this really does, I don't think about the future at all now. It was a coping strategy, and it's just really helped me in life in general. Tanya, your turn, my friend. Can we start off with you telling us a little bit about who you are and about your daughter, Mackenzie?
Sure. That I feel so privileged to be listening to these beautiful conversations. I'm like, oh, I feel so full. um, I'm a single mum, and I've been on my own with Mackenzie. She's 15 now, which blows my mind. I still think she's 4. Like, how have I got an almost adult? It's crazy. And I came from a background of being an occupational therapist. So I was a health professional long before I was a parent. And I think that really helped me through the process of diagnosis. Mackenzie was very sick when she was born, and she was diagnosed sort of between 6 and 9 weeks of age. So, yeah, we had some complications right from the get-go. We weren't sure what that was and why that was happening. It all just sort of seemed like random little things. And then she, yeah, ended up being really quite unwell. And we were living in New Zealand at the time, and she was airlifted to another hospital. So we were kind of taken away from her dad and our support there. And I spent 3 weeks in a hospital in Wellington, literally on the other island, a flight away from home. So that was pretty tough. And quite isolating. And yeah, went through, within a year, her dad and I had separated just because the stress and the hardship and the uncertainty and all the fear and all the dynamics that comes with a diagnosis. And, already it shifted the foundations of our relationship. And I ended up moving back home to Sydney from New Zealand, and I've been here ever since, which my parents very happy about. Yeah, so I come from a background of being an OT, continued to do that and continued to work predominantly in catastrophic injury management. So I was working with people who had brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and quite high level amputations. And I loved that job and was really good at that job. But by the time Mackenzie was sort of 6 or 7, the scales were tipping pretty heavy, and I was not coping really with the demands of my job as well as the demands of my role as a parent. Those first sort of 5, 6, 7 years are pretty full on. It was like once she got to primary school, I was like, okay, whoa, we're alive. She's doing things. This is great. And then I once I'd got her to school that first year, I was just like hustling and working really hard. And I just dug myself a hole, and I kind of got to a point where I burnt out. And yeah, I woke up one morning and I literally couldn't get out of bed, but I wasn't sick. It was almost just like the energy had completely drained down to like that fine line of red, like on a phone battery. And I spent a whole day, like 24 hours, just being unable to get up out of bed. And it was kind of a turning point for me. I woke up the following day as though nothing had happened. But that whole day that I was laying in bed, I was thinking, if I don't look after myself, who's going to look after my daughter if I can't do that? And so that was kind of a really pivotal moment for me. And then going down a completely different path of making sure that I was a priority and that I was looked after whilst also looking after Mackenzie. And because of that, I left my career as an occupational therapist. And as you know, Melanie, that kind of came with me selling everything I owned, buying a caravan and traveling for 6 months in a caravan, because I was just like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we living our lives like this, like working so hard, burning ourselves out, as well as all of the other complex things that come with disability. And because I was a health professional, I wasn't doing anything half-heartedly. I was like, I was in there like a bull at a gate, doing everything I could to support Mackenzie to have, just the best opportunities in life. She's completely blind. She has autism and an intellectual delay. She has low muscle tone. She didn't walk until she was 4, but she walked. And that was probably one of the greatest moments for me, not because she walked, but because she achieved something we'd set the intention for. And, I just worked so hard, so freaking hard to build her body up. And mostly the driving force behind that was proving the doctors wrong. I was just like, oh, you've given me that information. I was like, no, nope. Watch me, And so, yeah, knowing the brain was plastic and dynamic and could change. I know very well that that's not possible for everyone, not only because I come from a background of being a health professional working with people who have radical changes to their brains, but I also have an older sister and her son has cerebral palsy as well. So, I knew that it was possible that the outcomes would be different, but I just was, working pretty hard to try and create different outcomes, and in the process, burnt myself out. So yeah, kind of since Special was written and came out, and we had that beautiful conversation in that little cafe, I've kind of really softened the expectations that I have on myself as a woman who wants to work in the world, and kind of really focused on just supporting my nervous system and feeling really good and being joyous and peaceful. They're kind of my values now. And Mackenzie has kind of been this little guiding light. Like anytime I think, oh, I might just try and do this thing, she'll do something that makes me not be able to do it. I'm like, all right, fine. I got the message. So we have a pretty peaceful and pretty quiet life, just thinking about therapy. We've just done a 6-month intensive of neuro rehab, neurofeedback therapy, and I'm exhausted. I'm like, oh man, I forgot how intense and how hard that kind of therapy is. But I wanted it and I was looking for it and I found it, and I'm so glad she's done it. But the rest of this year is just like, I'm off social media. I'm a writer as well. I published a children's book, which was about our big road trip. And I just want to spend the rest of this year not investing my time in anybody else but Mackenzie and myself and the completion of my memoir. So, big journey for us. Kenza's doing amazing. She'll be in year 11 next year, which is just like, she thinks it's hilarious. She'll be like, can you believe I'm 16 soon? I'm like, shh, don't say that. So, we're in this transitional phase of early adulthood, which is wild and amazing and exciting. And, she's highly conversational and incredibly social, and she has amazing skills in just lots of different things, in music and connect. She's a real connector. She really loves to get people together, and I love just watching her grow and develop. I'm excited to see what happens in her brain and her nervous system with all of this intense therapy we've just done over the rest of the year. So yeah, I'm always just, looking for ways to support her. And often the driving force behind that is if she can do that thing by herself, it's one less thing I have to do. Yeah. Often that's the driving force. Yeah. If I can get her to do that task, that skill, then I don't have to do it. So it's kind of a bit of a warped and backward ways of me supporting her to develop her skills. But ultimately, I want her to have as much independence as possible for herself, but also because it lessens the burden on me when you're a sole parent and holding that for yourself. I have, just kind of softened. Like, it's okay that that's the reason why you want her to be able to butter her own toast, I don't want to have to do it anymore,
That's very motivational. That makes a lot of sense. Tanya, our conversation, it was one of the rare ones where you and I did meet in person, and you were very nice. You came to Leichhardt, which to a little cafe up the road from me, and I remember you walking in and I was just like, you are so gorgeous, so tall. It was like this goddess. You wafted in, you ordered the soup, I remember, and we started talking, and you were like, sometimes this is just really shit. And I was like, yes. She swears, the goddess swears. And you just came out with this incredible, so articulate, as anyone listening then can hear. I love the way you write. I love the way you speak, and you help our community so much. And I remember you saying that, and you were just so honest. You were like, sometimes it's just really, really, really shit. And you told me about this time when it was so hard, where you just screamed and you left the house. Tell us how you dealt in that moment with what was going on, and how do you still deal now with the really, really, really shit times? What are your strategies?
Yeah, my goodness. Yeah, that experience was off the back foot of a really messed up situation where, I felt so trapped. And it's like I was trying to expand my social life and do things that I wanted to do and love, but I couldn't because I had this little person that just needed me all the time. And I went along to a fundraiser. I don't know, you might remember the story of a woman up in Newcastle who was hit. She was a pedestrian and she got hit by a car, and her 8-month-old baby died in utero. And so it was this huge fundraiser and this massive legal and lawsuit that went on to change the law in Australia around, criminal offences around death of fetuses, babies. Anyway, so we were at this fundraiser and I took Mackenzie into the bathroom because she has an injection every night for growth hormone because she has quite a complex medical condition. And there was no change table. And so I just kind of freaked out, and it was loud and she was overwhelmed. It was late at night, and the whole time I was just like, shouldn't be here. I shouldn't have brought her. And I didn't tell her I was going to jab her in the ass with this needle. And I just stood her in between my legs and jabbed her, and she moved and the needle snapped off and went inside her body. And I was just like, I froze. I went into a complete state of dissociation and was just like, fuck. Picked her up and walked out and saw my sister, and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, the needle's in her bum. And she was like, what do you mean the needle's in her bum? So that kind of situation led us into John Hunter Hospital because we were away from home. She had an x-ray that was so traumatic. Went into surgery to find the needle, didn't find the needle. It's still in her body somewhere. But after that experience, she was so traumatized by that every time I had to give her needle, which was every night, she would just thrash her body, just thrash. And I would be laying on her, pinning her down, trying to give her this needle. And she was just losing it. And I lost my shit. Like I just screamed and I was like, you have to lay still. And my dad walked into the bedroom because we were living with my parents at the time, and he yelled at me. He's like, just don't give her the fucking needle. And I was like, but she'll die if I don't give her this injection. And I threw the needle on the floor and I ran outside. It was the middle of winter. It was freezing cold. And I had so much guilt. It was the guilt that it triggered this rage. It wasn't that she couldn't handle it. It was just that it was just so big and so complicated and so painful, the whole situation. And I didn't want her to need to have this needle. And it was so big in my nervous system and my emotional body and my mind, because I was so guilty for having injured her in that way. She has this massive keloid scar on her butt cheek, which is just like a little reminder every day. I'm like, oh, that time that I jabbed her in the ass and lost a needle in her flesh, just made such a stupid decision, and I felt so ashamed, and there was just so much fear. And so, yeah, it was a big emotional experience that kind of led me into this moment where I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I knew that I had to leave, because once I'd erupted, I was like, I just literally ran outside, and it was freezing cold. It was like 3 degrees outside, and the cold air just coming into my lungs, it was like just soothing this burning feeling in my body. And I just walked and walked and walked and breathed and breathed and breathed and breathed until the coolness and everything in my body just settled. And I just walked back inside, and Mackenzie was sitting on mum's lap, and mum was reading her a book. And I just picked up the growth hormone off the floor, and I said to her, I need to give you this needle. I know this is hard. I'm just asking you, please, it'll just be 2 seconds. And I gave her that injection. And from that moment, it's settled. It took a couple of weeks, but it's settled. And we don't have a problem with it. That was many years ago. But yeah, it was like, 1, removing myself from the situation, 2, recognizing that we have to do really hard things.
Mm.
We have to do really hard things, and it's well beyond the scope of what I ever imagined my duties would be as a parent. And I had to do it by myself. So there was this real sense of being alone. Like the only other person that's ever given her her needle is my mum. And so it's like, well, if it's not me, it's my mum. It's not mum. Who's going to do it? So this real sense of having to hold the weight of that alone. And so, yeah, it kind of, it was the walking away and the coolness, the cold of the air, like it was so big in my body, and literally I could just feel it cooling me down. And just really focusing on my breath. I've had a long-term meditation and yoga practice, and I teach both of those things, and they were and continue to be really valuable tools. Just using the breath, knowing what's happening in my nervous system, knowing what my emotional landscape is in any given moment, and the impact that has on Mackenzie. If I'm not fully regulated and in check, she feels it straight away. She'll be like, "Why are you sighing?" She's like, clocks it straight away. And so, yeah, yoga, meditation, breath work, both just in, deep, slow exhales, as well as a regular practice, and then big cathartic kind of breath work practices. I've seen many energy healers, Reiki, emotional freedom, breath work, a whole host of things that I've used to support me in my journey of healing and coming to a place of deep love and acceptance. But sometimes it's still hard, and when it's hard, Mackenzie's just in a room right now talking to Google and playing with her iPad or whatever she's doing. So there's a lot more capacity for me to just take a check-in on myself, and how important that is, because when I'm centered and I'm grounded and I'm calm, she is as well, and then she feels really safe, and there's a lot of trust, and then I can navigate those big things. And so that was kind of the last time, I think, where I really lost my shit. I sense it coming now.
I love, it was so helpful for you to share that with me. I remember at the time, because I was like, you're such a composed, elegant person, and for you to share that this could even happen, that you got to this point. And I remember you telling me about when you were walking around in the cold and you were saying, just this breath, just this breath, just this breath. And I use that strategy now, like just this breath, to like come back. I'm not very into, I should be more into the yoga and that stuff. You're amazing at all of it, but and I'm not into mantras and mindfulness and meditation, but that just this breath thing really helps me. And you continue to share. Tanya, for those who don't know, has an amazing email you send out. It feels like quite frequently. I don't know how you get time to write. I think you should put all your emails together and make that into a book as well. So much advice, so much goodness for our community. So thank you for doing that. Anyone that isn't signed up, please sign up. We are running out of time, which I knew would happen once we started sharing stories. There's been absolute gold dust from all of you. I just want to whip around quickly with a last question for all of you, which is, what is your best piece of advice for parents who are new to this experience of raising kids with disabilities, with difference? Tara, let's start with you.
I really think probably it's about that connection and learning from lived experience. I think trusting what other parents who have been in your shoes before you, like what wisdom they can share. I think I've learned so much. Like, for example, NAPA. I didn't know about NAPA, but it was through parents sharing that I found out about it, about Willow's surgery that we went overseas for. I only knew about that because parents shared, and I spoke to parents about it. So as much as it helps with that therapy and connection, but you also learn so much from them. And I think and therapists are amazing. Like, one other little thing, but sometimes if it's not a good fit, then trust your gut, because there are other therapies out there. There are other activities. Get advice from those who have been there before you. Because we've had a few therapists we've let go. They just weren't the right fit and moved on to better things. So I think just trusting yourself and making sure you do have a little bit of community behind you, whatever that looks like, if it's the online forums, if it's through your sharing, if it's through writing, because yeah, that lived experience is gold. Like today, like jumping onto things like this and learning from you guys, you just get so much out of it. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, beautifully said. And thank Frick for social media. The connection can be
Yeah.
global. There's gorgeous Molly, who I saw on the call earlier. She's in the UK and we connected. We spoke when I was over there. Never spoken before. I feel like she's a very close friend of mine now after, you know, our brief chat. It can be anywhere. It's incredible.
Yeah.
This connection, just it goes the distance, it crosses countries. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tara. Heather, what's your advice for newbies?
Read your book. So
it.
I mean, honestly, like if you haven't already, like it's something I tell everyone about throughout my network of parents who have children with a disability. So and just I think I connected with Kindred and Plumtree, or kind of like Kindred are a great organization. They run a lot of empowering workshops. There's something they're running one now. I did Now and Next at Plumtree, and they're running something similar, I think, in Kindred at the moment. But that was all about sort of setting goals for your child, and also viewing therapy as not just something that you do for an hour in a particular setting, but like integrating it into your child's life and getting more out of that, and empowering and educating yourself so that you can bring those therapies into everyday life. And do the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families program. I think is an amazing program, because just don't forget that you're important as well, and that you matter too. And, you know, the statistics around parents of children with a disability, well, in terms of us neglecting ourselves, are pretty bad, and they actually can lead to some really poor outcomes. So it's really important that we actually do look after ourselves. Things like going to a doctor for like a little bit of a yearly check. My GP, puts aside a free session for me every year to just like have check up on things, because it's really important that, you know, we matter too. And try and enjoy your child. Don't just get focused on the fear. So hopefully that's a few things.
Absolutely amazing, love. Awesome points there. And I totally agree. Just enjoy them. Just look at their little face. Look at their eyes. Like Arlo's always really helped us with that. If we just focus on him and he's usually laughing, or, you know, usually laughing at us, that just really helps you look at what's important in the moment. I think that's great stuff. Thank you, Heather. Tanya, what advice do you have?
Ask for help. I was a martyr and was like, no, I don't need anyone's help. I can do this by myself. And it was at the detriment of me and my daughter. And we are designed as human beings to connect and to feel a sense of belonging and to be in community with each other. And so people want to help, and sometimes they're just afraid. And so don't be afraid to ask them, can you please come in and help? And be okay with knowing that they're not going to care for your child the way that you can. That was a big one for me. I would resist the support, because I'd be like, well, if I give her to my parents, she'll probably just sit on her iPad all day. But now I'm just like, whatever, I'm not there. I can't see. Who cares? I'm having a great time doing something different. So just ask for help. Know that it's probably not going to be to the level that you would provide, but that is okay. If it means you get to go out and do whatever it is that you're wanting and needing, then it's better than not doing it at all. And in those times where, thinking about, like, I know both Heather and Melanie and Tara, not doing as much therapy as the kids get older, even when they're little and they're young, and you know that the therapy is so beneficial and so helpful, if you don't have the energy for it, don't do it. Just put it away, enjoy your child, be together, just be a mum. It's not going to be a problem if they miss therapy for a day or a week or a month. And actually, it's really important at times that their brain and their body has a break. And you'll see that when you give them a bit of a pause from all of the intense therapy, that's when things start to settle, because the brain receives all of the goodness. And I know for Mackenzie, when we stop and have a good break from therapy within 3 or 4 months, I'm like, oh, look at that, she's doing this thing that I've seen her do before or say or thinks about things. So the pause is actually really important. It's a valuable time for you just to be a parent and for the children to receive all the goodness of the hard work that's been doing. So yeah, there's 2 little ones there.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, all 3 of you, firstly for saying yes to the book and for being in it in the first place, and for coming back 5 years later and celebrating with us tonight. Paul, do I have to do the excerpt?
No, you don't have to do the excerpt. We're running a little over time, but I wanted to mimic that and say thank you to all of you for your time. Obviously, thank you to Melanie for, first of all, putting pen to paper and writing this book, 5 years ago. And of course, for the 3 ladies who joined her in that journey 5 years ago and tonight. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy and your words of advice. Speaking of lived experience, and I think what I've taken away most, and I'm going to join this conversation too, because I myself have a child, that goes to NAPA and is in the disability world. Hands up, people on the screen, if you were ever told by your pediatrician or another doctor that your child wouldn't do this or wouldn't do that. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's really, really important for those of you. I'm not sure who's on the call tonight, whether or not how far along you're on in your journey. But just remember, we were probably all told at some stage that our child wouldn't. I mean, personally, we were told that our child wouldn't walk or talk, and our child has blown us out of the water in terms of both of those things. So, it's incredible. And I'm sure you've all got very, very similar stories as well. So for those of you who are on the call tonight, and if you're early on in your journey, don't necessarily listen to that. Persevere, travel the path that you want to and that's right for you and your family and your child. And all power to you all. A big thank you to our speakers tonight, of course, to Melanie Dimmitt, our author extraordinaire, and our very, very special guests, Heather, Tanya, and Tara. Big shout out to Mandy Hose, because I know you're in there somewhere there. Mandy's our guest speaker at our next NAPA Nights, which is in November, which will be on sleep and settling techniques. So she's here. So big shout out to Mandy. I don't know if you're there and you can turn your camera on. Maybe you don't want to. You might be in your dressing gown or something like that. And that's totally okay. But if you want tickets to that sleep and settling workshop, it is on the 12th of November, and you can get those tickets via Eventbrite, which is how you would have got your tickets for tonight's event. So thank you everyone for spending your Tuesday evening with us. A big thank you to our guest speakers, and once again, yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for hosting, Paul. We do have a question there.
Sorry.
Answer it.
Where's the question?
Mel and others, there are so many powerful messages in special. Which ones do you keep coming back to as especially meaningful for you, even as times change? Does anyone want to jump on that one?
I think, Mel, you might be able to just confirm with me, was it Holly Carton, Coco's mum, who said, why not me? It was like this big question around why did this happen to me? And one of the things she asked, and I did as well, was, well, why not me? It's got to happen to someone, and it's going to be someone's journey, so why not my journey? And when I read that, I was like, yeah, why not? It's like so much wonderful stuff has come out of, like, my whole life is just so special because of Mackenzie, and it would be a vastly different path if it wasn't the way that it is. So yeah, I definitely landed in that place of just appreciating and loving and asking, well, why not me? It's like, let's go, bring it, So that's probably my biggest one.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share?
I think the whole comparison, sorry, should we come on? The whole comparison chapter is something that I come back to, because there are times that I find myself, being pulled back into that. So, I love the wisdom that in those pages. I think, it's just something that I keep referencing back. And also, I have to say, Melanie, on your Instagram page, you posted a lot of the great quotes and that I would keep coming back to. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but they're just there's so much wisdom. In fact, I even went through the process of writing out all your pearls of wisdom once, if you remember, and sending them to you.
Oh, I remember, because you haven't spoken much about your work, but Heather is like a marketing genius, and she read the book and then she sent me this amazing, very useful document of all these ideas of social posts and themes I could draw out. It was amazing. Like, people would pay a lot of money for that, and they do now, I hope, for you to do that. But yes, thank you, lovely. But yeah, back when I was posting on my own Instagram, I was posting quotes. They're all still there. On the topic of comparison, one that really stuck with me is when Janie Johnson, Dare's mum, said she looks at other families and thinks, how boring. Because I definitely do that now. I think it makes it so interesting.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah,
it's a great one. We might have a question. Aurea, is that your name, Aurea? Do you have a question you want to ask one of the ladies? You can take yourself off mute, or maybe you're just putting your hand up, or maybe high-fiving me.
No,
that's okay. And Mandy has said that she's totally in her dressing gown, so she's not going to turn her camera on, but she looks forward to seeing you at our NAPA Nights event in November, right? Lots of beautiful messages.
Mandy is just back from Paris, where she was at the Paralympics with her champion daughter, which is quite amazing as well. So congrats, very Mandy and family.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Amazing.
All right, great. All right, that's it. Oh, she's typing. Hang on, we'll just.
She really was.
I really was. She really was. She says I really was. I don't know if she's talking about Paris or the dressing gown. I think it's both. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming along tonight, and we will see you at our next NAPA Nights in November. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Bye.
thank you.
See you, Heather.